Good afternoon, welcome to False Allegation Radio. This is episode number 2. So after yesterday's initial episode of sort of explaining who I am and why I'm doing this and what I'm here for, the response to it has been absolutely phenomenal. It's been wilder than I could have ever imagined, so thank you everybody for getting behind this and showing the support that you have done. It really does mean the world to me. Where I want to take this, like I say, is getting everybody else's story out there. And what I'm doing at the moment is, I guess I'm padding things out in order to make sure that we have enough content and to make sure that we're established enough so that by the time you come on as a guest, we know what we're doing, we know where we're going, and we know how to get it out there. Now, already a couple of... I have a history with certain news outlets, and I have a connection to a couple of journalists and a couple of celebrities. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a journalist. In the role that I used to do, there was a connection to them. So I've obviously kept in contact with them, and I've explained to them what I intend to do. And a couple of people have picked up on it, and they've had a look around, and they've listened to the initial episode, and they're making some good noises. We're a long way from sort of being a success, but we're on the right road, and that's the main thing. So I thought I'd do another episode today. Over the years, I've been asked many questions, and I've wrote a few of them down. So I figured, in order to maybe help them more mainstream, that obviously we have a community, don't we? A community that I never thought I'd ever become involved in, and in all fairness, I never even knew existed until I was falsely accused. But we have a community between us, and we help each other out, and we support each other through the dark times. And what I'd like to do is, that's fantastic, that's great, and I've always been part of that. You know, obviously False Allegation Radio has its own social media handles. Me as an individual, I also have another social media handle where I help those falsely accused. I'm no expert, but you know, sometimes people want to talk to others who have been there, and sometimes that's enough, and that's what I do. So over the years, I've been asked obviously many questions. So I figured, in order to try and almost break through to the more mainstream public, that I'd write a few of them down and I'd answer a few of them on this podcast. And then obviously I'll upload this podcast as a podcast, and I'll also upload this podcast as a YouTube video as well. Now, the numbers that yesterday's episode has already done for something that isn't even established has blown me away. It's phenomenal. So thank you for the support. Please keep sharing it. Please keep retweeting it. Tell your friend, well, not necessarily tell your friends, because I appreciate this is a subject that, you know, you might not have necessarily come out and explained to people that you've been involved in. But any associate that you have that you know is either going through a false allegation, going through parental alienation, or has been through either, please, you know, let them know that this podcast is out there to help them. We're looking for guests constantly. I think I've got a few weeks worth lined up. Ultimately, what the goal is to have guests lined up so that we can release 1 or 2 episodes every single week without fail, and just build that avalanche until it becomes unstoppable. And that we get in front of the people that can change the laws, and we get in front of people who can actually enact the laws that we already have and enact change. That's what it's all about. So one of the questions I'm asked, and obviously I touched on this yesterday, but one of the questions I am asked quite a lot is, are there any ramifications for the woman who falsely accused you? And the simple answer to that is no, there isn't. So to go back, for anybody who didn't listen yesterday to the first episode, my story, very, very briefly, is I was accused of rape, or I was accused of 2 counts of rape by my former wife. These accusations came out almost half a decade after I'd left her, the same week that I remarried. She'd initially suggested when I tried to leave her that if I was going to leave her, she would call me a rapist to the police. But she recanted that allegation via a text message the next day saying, no, you've never been a rapist. And then some half a decade after that, the same week that I remarry, I'm then arrested for rape. So any ramifications for her? None whatsoever. I showed the text messages of her saying, nope, you've never raped me. You are not a rapist. I would like you to come back and I would like us to continue our marriage. To the police, and I asked the police, I said, look, are we going to go with perverting the course of justice, or are we going to go with the lesser charge of wasting police time? Bearing in mind, this lady has a criminal record for domestic violence against myself. And the police's answer was, very simply, we do not prosecute false accusers. So obviously my whole conversation with them then was, that just gives the green light to anyone and everyone who wants to make a false allegation. And very quickly I was shut down by them, told to go away and live my happy life now that the decision had been no further action from the Crown Prosecution Service, some 12 months after the initial allegation was made. So I was on bail for 12 months. I had evidence that it was all made up and a lie, and I was told to go away. One of the other questions is, how did you prove that you was innocent? And it was, obviously I've just touched on the fact that I had a text message saying, no, you've never raped me. That was part of it, but I also had lots of text messages in the probably 5-6 weeks before I left saying, when you come home from work tonight, please can we have sex? Because we've not had sex for a long time, have we? And my replies would always be, I'm not sure. I don't think so. I don't feel very well. Or perhaps when I got a little bit braver, I would say things like, well, you assaulted me yesterday. I don't really want to sleep with somebody that assaults me. But that wasn't very regularly that I would give such an answer, but I did on a couple of occasions give such an answer. So I built a pattern in my police interviews of a woman who was constantly asking me for sex, who was begging me to go back to her after I'd left her, but yet she was saying that I had raped her almost a decade earlier and also a couple of years earlier, and that she'd been trying to end the relationship for a couple of years. So that was a couple of ways that I proved my innocence. It was really building the pattern of the abuser. And like I say, my ex-wife, my false accuser, also has a criminal record for domestic violence against myself as well. So it was showing the police the bigger pattern. It would have been very easy for me to go in and say no comment. And it was suggested afterwards, perhaps that's what I should have done. But I was innocent and I wanted to prove my innocence. And although I could have sat there and said no comment, I believed by going in there and proving beyond reasonable doubt that she had lied, that I would get justice for this. And ultimately I was failed by the police service, by the Crown Prosecution Service, and by the Home Office of the UK. And I'm not alone. There are, unfortunately, hundreds more like me. And I think that's the worst thing about it. I can sit here and say it's not fair that this has happened to me, but it's not just about me. And I think the most scary thing is the fact that, my new wife, who had just married me at the time, faced the prospect of losing her new husband for the next 8 years. The children that we had faced the prospect of losing their dad for 8 years. Now, I'm in quite poor health, so would I have lasted 8 years in prison? I don't think I would have done. So it could have even been worse than just a case of losing their dad and their husband for 8 years. So, a question I get asked a lot actually is, when you was given the news that no further action would be taken and you wouldn't be prosecuted and you wouldn't be taken to trial, did that restore your confidence in the judicial system? Or do you think it was a miscarriage of justice? And I guess there's two parts to the answer, really. The first part is all the Crown Prosecution Service could do to the question of is he guilty of rape is say no further action. So in that respect, that's an acceptable outcome, if you like. What isn't acceptable is the fact that it was acknowledged by the second interviewing officer that it was all a bit of a shambles. And still, I was on bail for 12 months. Still, I was interviewed, under caution, arrested, if you like, twice, from a woman who has a history of false allegations. As I mentioned before, the very same woman accused somebody of raping her when she was 16 years old in school. However, when her and I met, she was a virgin. And, these are the sorts of conversations that I actually had to go into with the police, whilst being filmed, interviewed by 2 female officers. Everything was recorded. And I had to sit there and say, not only did I not rape her, and this is why, here's a, building this picture for them, but also I had to sit down and say, well, actually, when we met, she was a virgin. But look here, she says she was raped at 16 years old. Fully raped at 16 years old. How is that possible if when her and I met, she was still a virgin? Now, I've managed to... She actually named the person to me once. She would never name the alleged attacker. She said it was too upsetting for her. And then, I think it was by mistake, because she'd seen somebody that she used to go to school with at a bus stop. She actually named him. And then very quickly turned it all around. I assumed to get sympathy. I don't know. That's just a guess. Excuse me. That is just a guess. I don't know if that's true or not. But it was all turned around to, well, actually, he was the person that raped me. So I got his name, and after I left, I tracked him down. And we went for a chat. And it turns out that she was a fantasist and it never happened. Now, obviously, he's going to say that. But he also had other things to tell me about this person that proved that it was all nothing but a fantasy. So there are actually, and I can't go into details about the other person, I'm afraid, but there are actually 3 men who have been falsely accused by this woman. And still the police won't act. So do I think that my faith in the justice system was restored? The Crown Prosecution Service answered the question, is he a rapist? With the answer no. So there's going to be no further action. However, this woman has been spreading these lies for 30 years. It's affected 3 different men. That's a miscarriage of justice. That despite the fact of the reams of evidence that I provided the police with, that they just said, no, we don't prosecute people who lie to us when it's about rape. Yet the very same police force have prosecuted people for wasting police time and perverting the course of justice in other cases, just not rape cases. I get asked what the happiest moment of my life is, and that's my kids being born. People say, well, was it not when you received the news that you wasn't going to go on trial? And it wasn't, because that wasn't the end of it, because I then had to wait to see if there was a review. I had to wait to see if she was going to appeal it. I had to wait to see if she was going to make any further false allegations. And guess what? Further false allegations were made some years later. But again, I can't go into those. I'm sorry. So one question I get asked a lot is, before you was falsely accused, were you on the I believe women side of the fence? And where do you stand now? Certainly when I was growing up, I have always had a massive respect for women. I've always been a gentleman, and I've always treated women in such a way. And that potentially made me weak for such an allegation, I suppose. I guess before this happened, I was more leaning to the side of, if a woman says this has happened, isn't it terrible? Something needs to be done. I didn't really think of the ramifications of what if she's lying. And the reason I didn't is because I was a gentleman, and I never thought in a million years that anybody would lie about something like this. Where do I stand now? Well, I stand on completely the opposite corner. Whenever I hear a story of anything, be it about somebody's accusing somebody of rape, be it somebody has stolen a $1 sweet from a shop, my first question is, okay, show me the evidence. And only after seeing all of the evidence will I then make a decision how I feel about whatever the situation is. Another question I get asked is, why did she do it? You purport yourself to be this gentleman, you purport yourself to respect women. Why would somebody lie about you raping them then if you're such an incredibly nice person? There's a couple of reasons, or there's a couple of things I want to say. Is I don't claim to be the nicest person in the world. I've made mistakes. Sometimes I don't get things right. Sometimes I don't react in the right way. I'm not a rapist in any way, shape or form. But I don't purport to be perfect, first of all. Second of all, why did she do it? I was in a very controlling relationship. She was mentally, physically, financially abusive to me. She controlled who I could and couldn't see. I didn't see my family for over a decade. I had no friends. My life consisted of going to work and coming home on a timer as well. So when I told her I'd left the office, I wasn't home in a certain time, then the suspicion was I was sleeping with somebody else. I was actually told one day that I must take a picture. Where are you? I said, well, I'm still in work. We're working late because it's a project. And we was putting new things in place for a new department. Where are you? It's dark. I'm still in work. Send me a picture. So I said, right, okay. I said, I'll go outside to the car and I'll take a picture. So I did. Believe it or not, I went all the way outside to show that the car was still there, to prove that I was still there, time stamping the picture and everything. And the reply was, that could be any office building. Who are you sleeping with? So the relationship was very controlling, very toxic in that respect. Why did she lie about rape? Because I'd left her. And she had then found out that I'd remarried. So this was her revenge for me getting on with my life and leaving her. It's as simple as that. I don't have to be a psychologist to think about it. I don't have to. It is literally as simple as that. Something else that people ask me is, are you upset by what happened? Are you angry? Are you okay now? Yes, I'm upset. I'm actually not upset at the person who falsely accused me. Should we call her Doris? I think we should. I'm not upset at Doris because Doris has mental health issues and Doris needs to spend time in a hospital facility for people with mental health issues. But until that happens, Doris isn't receiving the right care. I'm incredibly angry at the fact that I've been failed justice, or I've been let down justice by the powers that be. That should never happen in this day and age, especially when I have evidence of her saying I have lied. It baffles me to this day. It really does. Something else that people ask is, how has it affected relationships with other people? As I mentioned, I was arrested just after I'd remarried, and it was difficult. I was very lucky in respect of the fact that my wife and I, or my not Doris, so we'll call her my wife, my ex and false accuser will call Doris from now on. I was very lucky in respect of the fact that my wife and I have known each other since we were children. We actually lived in the same town when we was children. And then we sort of refound each other, if you like. Got back together. Well, not got back together, but we refound it. It's a very complicated story. We refound each other. I was then falsely accused, but I was very lucky in respect to the fact that she knew me, and she had known me ever since I was a child, and there was never any doubt in her mind that I was innocent of what I was being accused of. I still felt that I had to prove it to her as well by showing her all the evidence, which was difficult, to be honest, but that was just how it makes you feel. Relations were hard. I still have nightmares. I still have flashbacks. If a certain song plays on the radio, I can have a panic attack. And we are talking now. It was nearly a decade ago that I left my false accuser. So we are talking not, an inconsequential amount of time that all this has happened. But I still find it very, very difficult to deal with certain things. I'm just lucky to be with such a wonderful woman. People ask me, does it still affect me because I was found innocent, as in no further action was taken? And I actually laugh at them and say this affects me every single day of my life. I look at my children and think, I wouldn't even be here to see what you're doing today had somebody mistakenly believed the lies that had been told about me. I look at my wife and think, I wouldn't be here today to have this conversation with you had somebody believed the lies that Doris had told. And then I'm asked, what do I think about the Me Too movement? And I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted because I support somebody who is a genuine victim of very heinous things, genuinely heinous things. But at the same time, it's been hijacked by people like Doris for revenge, for the sake of hating on men, for the sake of getting their own way. And I just find it incredibly vile. There's just no other word to describe it other than vile. So what do I think of Me Too? I think for people who are genuine, it's great, but it's destroying more lives than what it's saving. And I know for a fact when a feminist hears this, the amount of abuse that I'm going to get will be like the avalanche that I spoke about at the start. But hey ho, that's the way it is. So I hope that answering a few of the questions like that will give you the understanding that I am an open book. I'm asking you to tell your story in the same way that I'm going to tell my story. And I think what would also be a good idea is if, whilst I intend to be the host of this, I do have a friend who I intend to interview, and I have asked him if he wants to be sort of a co-host at certain times. I think what would also be good is if he interviews me and I tell my story in a very structured way as well. So I'm going to wrap up this episode here. I guess where I want to go with it is I'm going to do more of these question and answer sessions. So ask me anything is, I guess, the topic of the day. So if you're seeing this on YouTube and there's a question that I've not answered that you want to ask, leave a comment below and I will do more of these videos. If you see this on Twitter or any other social media and there's more questions that you want to ask, leave a comment in the, tweet below, I guess. And again, I'll reply to you, I'll answer you. And if you want to be a guest on the show, let me know. My inbox is open, or leave a comment, reply to a tweet, whatever. However you wish to contact me, I'm happy to do it the way that you want to do it. With regards to recording these, ultimately it's going to be a case of recording them, I would imagine, during the day UK time. For obvious reasons, I can probably record them early evening as well. But I do have a family and I do have kids, and obviously it's such a sensitive subject. The only thing that you will need to take part in the show is Skype. You might not have a computer with a microphone on, you might not have a computer. If you've got an Android or a Apple iPhone, you can download the Skype app to your phone and you can talk just like a normal phone call to me via Skype, and I will be able to record our conversation and put it out as a podcast and put it out on YouTube. So I will handle all the technical side of it. I just need you now to start coming forward saying, okay, I'd like to be a part of this. We'll discuss questions that we're going to ask, etc. Don't worry about any of that. It's not going to be an ambush. It's not going to be a hostile place. It's going to be a friendly, welcoming and open place for anybody who wants to tell the story. So please do come down and tell your story. I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to get your story out there. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Welcome to False Allegation Radio. This is episode number 2. So after yesterday's initial episode of sort of explaining who I am and why I'm doing this and what I'm here for, the response to it has been absolutely phenomenal. It's been wilder than I could have ever imagined. So thank you everybody for getting behind this and showing the support that you have done. It really does mean the world to me. where I want to take this, like I say, is getting everybody else's story out there. And what I'm doing at the moment is, I guess I'm padding things out in order to make sure that we have enough content